Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to spring. May not seem like spring, but Mother Nature has been acting strangely for the past few years, and she is once again. I'm going to make some opening comments. You'll then hear from County Executive Steve Ballone. You'll hear from Nassau County Executive Laura Curran. You'll then hear from Phil Eng, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the MTA. I'd also like to thank Colonel Robert Mitchell from the National Guard and all the National Guard people who are being deployed today. Kathy Calhoun is here, who's the Director of State Operations, Superintendent of the State Police. George Beach, Paul Karras, who's the Commissioner of New York State DOT. We're also joined with Town of Babylon Supervisor Rich Schaefer, Town of Huntington Supervisor Chad Lupinacci, and Town of Oyster Bay Supervisor Joseph Saladino, who said if anyone in the Town of Oyster Bay has any problem shoveling snow, you can call him. His personal cell phone is 917. Okay, maybe not. The National Weather Service forecast, as you know, is for a winter storm watch, and they were correct. We have a winter storm in process now. It is affecting the downstate area from the mid-Hudson down with a range of accumulations in that area. The snowfall is lighter this morning. It will get heavier as we go through the day. So it is somewhat deceptive. People shouldn't look out the window and see this level of snowfall and say, this is no problem. I can venture out. It's going to get worse in the afternoon, worse in the evening. Even this level is dangerous. On the way out, we saw a very bad accident on the Long Island Expressway. There's been a very bad accident on the Wantagh Parkway. The roads are very icy and the roads are dangerous. And again, there is no reason to be on the roads unless it's an emergency. We want the first responders and the plows to be able to do their business. And what happens is one car goes out, one car gets stuck, there's one accident, it backs everything up, and it slows all the work. We're looking at 10 to 15 inches in the lower portions of the Mid-Hudson Valley region, Westchester, Putnam, Rockland counties. We have about 15 inches in New York City. In Nassau County, 10 to 14 inches. In Nassau and in Suffolk, it gets somewhat lighter as you move towards the eastern side of Suffolk, where the storm dissipates slightly. It is a heavy, wet snow, which is a problem. It's a heavy, wet snow combined with high wind gusts. And that is the combination of a nor'easter that creates problems. The heavy snow sits on the trees, sits on the power lines. The high gusts of wind, as high as 40 to 50 miles per hour today, are forecast. That then creates an added complication where trees come down, poles come down, branches come down, and then we have a power outage issue. We have rapid response teams that are poised and ready to go for the Long Island Railroad, for Metro-North. We have additional utility personnel who have been deployed. We have about 5,500 utility personnel now deployed in the affected area. That number will go up to about 6,100 personnel by the end of today. Those personnel are matched with equipment. If we have the worst case scenario, which is a heavy snow and high winds and power outages, we'll have the personnel to deal with it. As you know, at the last storm we went through, we had a number of power outages that took a prolonged period of time to get them up and running. It was a problem on Long Island. It was a problem in Westchester. I asked for a review by the Public Service Commission that regulates the utilities because they have to do a better job, period. People pay them to supply power to the home, not just when it's sunny, but also when there's a storm. And New Yorkers are understanding, and we understand there can be a storm and power lines are down, but we also expect the utility companies to do their job and have the personnel and the resources to quickly restore power. And in my opinion, they have failed that mission. And the Public Service Commission is doing a review. That review could end in financial sanctions. And I also want to say to the utility companies, you don't have a God-given right to operate as a utility company in the state of New York. They are granted a license. They're granted a franchise. And if they don't perform, that license and franchise can be revoked, and it will be revoked. I understand these storms are a relatively recent phenomenon, but we have all had to adjust. New Yorkers have had to adjust, local government has had to adjust, and the power companies have to learn to adjust. This is the new normal, and we want better service from them that we've gotten thus far. We are instituting a tractor-trailer ban on I-84 from the Pennsylvania line to the Connecticut line, 684 from I-84 to Hutchinson River Parkway, New York State Thruway from I-84 south to the New York City line, I-287 from exits 1 to 12, I-95 from the New York City line to the Connecticut line. We do not now have a plan to close the LIE, but we're watching it. And as I said, the storm will get worse before it gets better. If you're making plans to leave your house, you could see a change in the Long Island Railroad service as the conditions get worse. You could see more road closings as the conditions get worse. So that's something that people should keep in mind. I'm also declaring a state of emergency for Putnam, Westchester, Rockland, New York City, all 5 boroughs, Nassau and Suffolk. As we've had more experience at this than any of us would like, we have redeployed assets from upstate New York to downstate New York. We have hundreds of generators, light towers, sandbags. God forbid, in an emergency, we have meals, water bottles. We have about 350 extra large plows that have been brought down. We have loaders that have been brought down. And as I mentioned, the additional personnel for the utility companies. We have a toll-free hotline for anyone who is in an emergency situation, loses power, needs shelter, and that line is 866-697-2434. I want to thank my colleagues and my friends in local government. One of the things that works well for New Yorkers is our ability to coordinate and work as one. We're Nassau County, we're Suffolk County, we're New York City, but we're all New Yorkers, and at a time of emergency, we all work together. And I want to applaud the county executives and the supervisors who are here because we work seamlessly, and that makes a big difference. If one area needs help, and another area has extra personnel, extra resources, we all work together as one. So I want to thank them for their professionalism and for their courtesy and how well the operation works together. Before I turn it over to County Executive Ballone, one final note. We have 300 National Guard that will be helping today. The National Guard have been fantastic. We remember on Long Island Hurricane Sandy and how the National Guard were everywhere. And whatever people needed, they were there. They deploy immediately. They leave their family. They leave their community. And they come to help others. And that is the greatest public service, when you leave your family at a time of emergency to help someone else's. And they've been there for Hurricane Sandy. They're there for all the storms. They're there again today. So we're aware and accustomed to seeing them on situations like today. But they do something else. They are also there to defend the nation. That's their primary duty. And they put their lives on the line to defend this nation. And we had a painful reminder when we had a helicopter go down in western Iraq and 7 Americans were lost. 4 New Yorkers were lost. And the crew was out of the 106 at Gabreski base. It brings it all home. These are not just domestic heroes. They're international heroes. And 4 New Yorkers paid the ultimate price. And our thoughts and our prayers are with their families as they're dealing with this crisis. And I'd ask for a moment of silence just to recognize their sacrifice and let the families know that they are in our thoughts and in our prayers. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to County Executive Ballone.
Thank you very much, Governor, and thank you for your words about the service members we lost from the 106. They are indeed American heroes and local heroes to us here. So we are in the midst of a major winter storm in springtime. That is the reality that we seem to be in this month, and as the Governor has said, we have experienced increasingly severe weather over the last several years. To reiterate a couple of points the Governor made, first and foremost, the coordination. I want to thank Governor Cuomo and his emergency management team, who have been absolutely incredible. That coordination is pivotal. We were on the phone on a conference call yesterday, coordinating the response here, and then the deployment of those resources. In the last storm, we utilized some of those state resources on the east end. This storm, we are now deploying additional resources to some of the trouble spots like North Ocean Avenue, which has had difficulty in the past, and the Governor has allowed National Guard troops to be pre-deployed there as well. That kind of coordination and that kind of assistance is pivotal in addressing storms like this and making sure that we're keeping people safe. So thank you to the Governor for that. The other point the Governor made, which I think is very important to emphasize, the storm is going to get worse. The rate of snowfall that we're looking at later this afternoon, 1 to 3 inches an hour. That is fast, and if you are out on the road and there are enough cars out on the road, people can get stuck. So I urge people, if you're not on the road, stay off the road, stay home, and if you can, as quickly as possible, return home if you have to be out on the road, because as the Governor said, things can turn very quickly, and that snow starts falling very rapidly. The visibility goes down. It can go down very low. It could go down close to 0, and those become very treacherous conditions. So urge people to be safe today, get off the roads, let the plow operators do their job. I want to thank them. You know, they have done yeoman's work this winter, this March, and they will be out there all day. They will be out there all night. All of the workers out there, I want to thank them, and certainly our emergency response teams, our Chief of Department, Stu Cameron, Acting Police Commissioner, and thank them for the work that they're doing. So just again, urge people, stay off the roads. If you're out there, get home, get safe as soon as you can, and let the workers do their work. Thank you.
Well said.
So 4 nor'easters in 3 weeks. This really is the new normal. And I want to thank Governor Cuomo for helping out in every one of these storms and every one of these crises that we have. Some are a little more major than others. But whether it's manpower or equipment, the Governor and the entire state team is here for us, and we're very grateful for that. This is snow that is falling thick, it's falling heavy, and it's falling wet. And as Steve Ballone said, it's going to be 1 to 3 inches every hour. We are cautioning drivers, please be very, very careful. We've already had a report on the Wanchau Parkway southbound between the Southern State and Hempstead Turnpike of a fatal accident. That portion of the Wanchau Parkway is closed. We're going to be looking at the emerging trends of this storm. If we need to close more roads, we will. Our buses right now are on or close to schedule. That could change as this weather develops. So please take extreme caution. I would also like to tell our business owners, if you have parking lots, you are no longer allowed to plow that snow out into the road. It makes it very difficult for people to drive, and we will be enforcing that ordinance. So please be careful. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, these weather events can be very unpredictable, and one of the things that I'm happy to note is that the riders this morning have heeded some of the concerns, and we saw a less than usual morning rush hour, approximately 25% lower than our usual commuters. In spite of that, we're still running normal schedules right now, but we also plan to add 3 additional early release trains this afternoon. They will be the 223 to Babylon, the 209 train to Huntington, and the 325 train to Hicksville. And as the storm picks up this afternoon and we approach the evening rush, we encourage riders to leave earlier this afternoon for their commutes. We're actively monitoring the weather conditions, and if we plan to make any service changes, we will let you know in advance to allow you the time necessary to adjust your travels. And safety is our top priority when operating train service. Out of an abundance of caution, as the governor noted, Long Island Railroad may temporarily need to adjust service or suspend service should snow conditions and snowfall totals reach over 10 inches. And we ask that our customers anticipate potential delays. That being said, our crews have been preparing since yesterday evening with personnel and equipment deployed across the island in strategic locations. We have an additional 1,065 personnel on staff combating the storm. We also have deployed additional switch crews, a total of 85 across the system. And in advance of the storm and after this morning's rush, we've added 4 de-icing trains and a minimum of 4 additional patrol trains to assist and help prevent snow buildup that may occur along the 3rd rail. These trains will also be deployed for the afternoon rush, and in addition to that, we have 4 Protect trains and additional Protect buses should they be needed, should we see any disabled trains. With heavy snow and potential winds, we've proactively pre-deployed Long Island Railroad response teams who can better respond to any potential trees or branches that may fall and hinder train service. And we're working closely with our local partners in the county and our utility partners. Long Island Railroad is staffed at both the Nassau and Suffolk County EOCs and coordinating very closely with PSEG on any power-related issues that may occur. And finally, all of our station waiting rooms will remain open throughout the storm and through the evening. We've deployed additional customer ambassadors across the system at Penn Station, Atlantic Terminal, and Jamaica to assist with latest service changes. And we encourage our customers to visit MTA.info/Long Island Railroad for any updated information on service. Also, they can visit mymtaalerts.com and have alerts sent directly to them. And just a quick report on some of our other agencies. Metro-North, the AM ridership, we also saw a decrease of about approximately 1/3 of the ridership, and we begin operating that service on a reduced weekday schedule to mitigate the potential of switch troubles. The evening Metro-North service will operate hourly, and we have additional staff combating the storm up there. Some of the subway service also, we have may end early on Wednesday. Underground express tracks are being used to store trains, and only if the storm continues in severity will potentially service may be limited on our subway system. And we have nearly 5,000 personnel fighting that storm with regards to subways. Our buses are limited and running on local as of this morning. Ridership was light, and all our buses have been chained to enable them to better commute through the storm. And over 2,000 employees additional there supporting that. And on bridges and tunnels, as we see, our road conditions are being carefully monitored. We ask our drivers to drive at reduced speeds on the wet roadways. And while they may not appear to be slick, we understand that that is a safety concern that people need to adhere to that. And we have a lot of salt available, 8,000 tons of de-icing, and additional staff working through that, the MTA bridges and tunnels. And just in closing, I'd like to thank all the men and women at MTA. I'd like to thank all the men and women at our partner agencies like New York State Department of Transportation. They're out there now working hard to keep our facilities safe for the public, and we ask that you all be careful in your travels. Thank you. It's Philip Eng, Phillip. Last name's E-N-G. Chief Operating Officer, MTA.
And Phil does a great job for the MTA. As you heard, the complicating factor is this is not just a Long Island event. If the forecast is right, 15 inches of snow in New York City is a major occurrence, and that will affect Long Island also. Many of the trains go to New York City or come from New York City. Traffic on roads like the Long Island Expressway, the Southern State, backs up if you have a problem in New York City. And 15 inches of snow is a lot of snow for New York City. I also want to echo what Phil said. We thank all the people who are out there and do such a great job in a situation like this. You know, we're encouraging people to stay home. But the people who are out there driving the trucks, driving the plows, they go out in the worst conditions. When we say everybody else should stay home, they leave their home and they go out into the worst conditions. And driving a plow truck, I consider myself a fairly good driver. I was in a plow truck a couple of weeks ago. That is a taxing enterprise that requires an extraordinary level of skill. I don't know how they do it with the efficiency that they do it. So it's a dangerous position they put themselves in, and we should respect them, and staying off the roads is a way to do that. Any questions?
Governor, going back to your comments earlier about power and utility companies, in regards to Long Island residents served by PSE&G, what is it that you want to see different than what you're currently doing in the front of the storm?
I want to see them better at storm recovery. Look, I understand what happens. I'm out there. I've been out there many times. I'm out there myself. I get it. Heavy snow, high winds, trees come down, poles come down. I understand it. I also understand what many of the utilities will say is, well, this is a new situation. We were talking about the new normal. That's also true. We didn't have this level of storms with this amount of damage attached to the storms. But we do. And the new normal has now been 3, 4, 5 years. And Nassau County and Laura Curran had to adjust to it. And County Executive Steve Bellone had to adjust to it. And every New Yorker had to adjust to it. And they have to adjust to it. And the challenge is not that the power goes out. They are slow in the restoration of the power. We bring in personnel. There's a situation called mutual aid, where I literally call neighboring governors and ask them to send their utility trucks and personnel. And they do. We bring in such a volume of personnel and equipment that the utility companies have a problem deploying that many people. So a utility company that normally deploys 200 crews now has to manage 2,000 crews. And that is a logistical problem. I get it. But I also get that they have to figure it out, because that's what they get paid to do. And we don't have the tolerance for 2, 3, 4, some homes, 10 days of loss of power from the last storm. That is just not acceptable. And I think there's a level of arrogance to the utility companies, where many of these utility companies have had a franchise for decades. And they believe they are untouchable. They are not untouchable. You can read the Bible. There's nowhere in the Old Testament or the New Testament where it says a utility company has a right to a franchise. They're licensed by the state. If they don't perform, we will find a new company that can perform. PSE&G is new on Long Island. That shows that you can switch a utility company. And there are many utility companies out there. We demand better performance. It's that simple. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I understand the difficulties. We face the same difficulties. New Yorkers are tolerant, but they have to improve their performance, period. Because tolerance has its limit, and we are at the limit of tolerance. I asked the PSC to do a review and an investigation, the Public Service Commission. They're doing that review now from the last storm. If they make a finding, there will be financial sanctions against the utility companies. But there's another avenue we can take, which is literally removing the franchise from that utility company. And it's something I would seriously consider.
Governor, unlike the last two storms, there seem to have been more accidents earlier on today. To what do you attribute that? Some drivers were questioning whether there were enough Sanders and Salters out early.
The Sanders and Salters were out early. I think what happened this morning is people looked outside and they said, oh, this isn't so bad. I can do this. It was worse than it looked. It is worse than it looks. There's a high level of icing on the roads. And as Steve and Laura mentioned, this isn't rocket science. What happens is when you have a high level of snowfall and there's one accident and things back up, the plows stop moving, and now you don't have salt on the roads and you don't have de-icer, and the snow piles up. But we were deployed, as the county executive Balone said, we've been preparing for 2-3 days. So we were fully deployed, everything was out. I think people underestimated the degree of difficulty with this storm.
Governor, excuse me, how would you rate the changes that Executive Director Putnam has done at JFK Airport after the January operations problem?
He has taken dramatic action. He's put in a new communication system, which is in process. He contacted the federal government and is working with them on a new communication system. So he saw the problem and he's responded. He's in the midst of it, but all the progress thus far is good. But you also raised an important point. I would not leave for the airport today if you think you have a flight without contacting the airport first. The majority of the flights are canceled. And again, more flights are expected to be canceled as we go throughout the day. So if you're looking to take a flight, or if you think you may need to pick someone up from an incoming flight, the good news is you may not need to pick up that person on the incoming flight. I'm sure you will miss them dearly, but you may not need to take the ride. Okay? Thank you very much.